long term. I'm in it for the long game. 5 years from now, I truly don't believe I'm going to be looking back and going like, you know, I'm so glad I, sat on the sidelines during COVID.
So we're going to jump right into it with Darcie. So I'm going to pull up Mr. Darcie Dasilva. Darcie, why don't you give yourself a little bit of an introduction, explain kind of how we met. You're one of the OGs. You've been with the membership for quite a while. I know you're probably know a lot of these people from different groups and social media, and you've really ramped up your online presence. So let's start the conversation with, who you are and what you do and, why this conversation is happening.
Yeah, thanks. So, I grew up in London, first 20 years of my life. So London's always had a soft spot in my heart. A lot of my family's there. And growing up, my godfather invested in multifamily. So he had a number of sixplexes. And so I used to get odd end jobs where, we're putting up drywall, mowing a lawn. And I always associated wealth with him because it just seemed like he was always doing so well. So growing up, I always had this interest in real estate in the back of my mind that was something that I was going to do one day. And so 6 years ago, I joined with Keyspire, and I think that's where like everything changed. It was one of those things where you decide to invest in yourself, you invest in some education, and it's without a doubt the best investment that I've ever made. It gave me the confidence to look at deals on the numbers and not get emotional about them. It introduced me to Prime, which has been a huge piece of the puzzle for us. One of the many important pieces that you need to do all of that. And I remember, Justin, it was you and I actually going through that first property. It was a raised ranch in White Oaks, and
I remember.
this thing had like neon walls, cigarette stains, or cigarette burns, and smelled like literally smelled like cat piss.
Yep.
And you're walking around, and you're like, you're going to do really well with this property. And I'm kind of looking, going like, this is going to be my first duplex conversion. So I'm, still a little bit hesitant or whatever, but we ran with it and we did really, really well with that. It was actually one of the first conversions in London. So I remember submitting for permits and even the city telling us, we haven't been trained on how to approve these. So we're going to need a little bit of time to review that. And so fast forward to now, and we've really streamlined the business. We've grown with Prime and a number of members of our team, and it's been a fantastic wealth building vehicle. And I absolutely love it. I'm obsessed with it, and couldn't be happier to be working with Prime and doing more of these deals.
You're a good dude. I appreciate the shout outs. I do want to kind of humble ourselves and say, like, you all know us very well. This isn't a platform for us, right? Like, I want to make sure that this is focused on you, Darcie. We try and do, what we do to support you guys, but we look at ourselves as just part of the family. And we always try and grow and adapt and bring more value to you guys because that's our mandate to you, right? Those that came in the membership, that came outside of the membership. I mean, we always want to make sure that we honor that relationship and think like, how can we save you time, right? We've thought many times and had conversations with you of like, what do you need? Like, what do you need support wise? But going back to that first visit to that property, I still remember going through it. And this is just a testament to how community works. Was we started chatting about who's going to do the renovation, and it being Graham, and Graham used to be my neighbor. And then it's funny, I flipped we did a deal for him, and OEV set a record price for him there that, nobody had seen in that area at that time on a duplex. But it was interesting because both, like, the piece of the conversation I really want to focus on was like, you were a first mover in that secondary dwelling market, right? You identified an opportunity, like I was all over. It was public saying, from a provincial mandate, they're going to allow secondary dwelling units, which means you can basically turn a single family home into a duplex. This is the city of London. This is probably every municipality out there. They don't know what they're doing half the time, because when you go there with an idea, they're usually just saying no, and they're just giving you your piece of paper back. Or if you go there asking them, how do I do this? They're never going to give you an answer. They're going to give you non-committal answers, just like Western did to you or Steve on their website. The city's mandate is, this is our policy. This is how we do things. This is how planning applications happen. At any point in the process, the deal can go completely sideways on you, which is bananas, right? So how did you have the confidence to go in and say, you know what, I understand the policy, I understand the opportunity, what really gave you that drive to move forward on the project?
The way we evaluated deals completely changed. So through the education, and you don't have to subscribe to some sort of membership. There is plenty of great content, podcasts, YouTube channels where you can get access to all of this type of information. And so once we started to really nail down and break down what the numbers actually look like, that's when it provided us the confidence to move forward with these types of opportunities. Because again, you took the emotional piece out of it and you just looked at it. Either the numbers work or they don't. And if they do, great, go forward. If they don't, you just move on. And so there's no magic, there's no magic around it. It's, you plug those in, and if they work, you can feel confident to go forward. What was nice at the time, and I'll loop in a question here, was that was summer of 2015, I believe, when we did that. And at that time, you were able to get conditional offers in London, which was amazing, right? Especially when we look at the last couple of years, that's just not the case for the property type that we look at. So we were able to go conditional, do more due diligence, plug in even more numbers, and feel more confident about what we were doing there.
And, that's an interesting way to look at it, because I think a lot of people kind of get stuck in paralysis by analysis. You did two things that I want to point out there. One is you bet on yourself, right? And like you pointed out, there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of on-ramp into the business, into investing and actually doing things. You chose to go the route of betting on yourself and making an investment in a membership and a network, which, is definitely one of the routes that you can go. And I tell people, like, quite often when you make that bet, as much as the membership and the resources are going to help you out, you're the one that's responsible to make it work for yourself. And if it doesn't work, but you're watching everybody else go through the same system and they have 98 doors, or they're seeing big success on refinances, it's, not necessarily what they're doing. It's maybe what you're not doing. And I think the same applies to self-education. Like, I like watching Netflix like anybody else, but over the past couple of weeks, Darcie and I talked about this. I've been putting a lot of effort into the content we're putting out on YouTube, the structure, the business of my business, and going down wormholes and doing a lot of research. And there is an incredible amount of information. I think Darcie and I would both caution you to, be careful who you're taking advice from, because sometimes you'll have people that are regurgitating things they've heard from other people and other networks and just kind of disseminate that information. So do you find yourself cautious at all about kind of what or who you're taking advice from?
I think it's, for me, especially, pre-COVID, with my commutes to work, living in Toronto, it's about an hour there and back. And so I think very quickly, once you've got you've got some experience and you've got a good sense, you can start to understand who the people that are positioning themselves in one way that, may not actually have the experience to back that up, and who the people that are being real about it is. And so, I think you get a mixed bag, but with the content that's out there, there's some great stuff that you can consume and take in, and you take it for what you can. So I think, what I like to see is people that are specialists in a particular area. I'm not interested in being good at fourplexes and single family and then duplex conversions and whatever. Like when people think about us and the business and Nasilva Wealth, I want them to think London secondary suite conversions, and that's it. That's the niche that we want to focus on, that we want to be experts in, because long term for our business, it allows for us to make everything streamlined, right? We can look at a property and run the numbers without even going inside the property in many cases. Obviously, you've got to do that due diligence, but when you really start to work on that craft and focus, it makes everything so much easier, because there's less surprises that are coming up through that process. Maybe over time that might grow into something else, but right now we're head down. We're focused on one thing. We're focused on a couple of areas within a certain price point, and that's it. If it doesn't fit in that, we're moving on.
So high level, maybe can you rip into a couple of the deals that you've done? Maybe throw some numbers at people in terms of, what your initial analysis was, high level of the property, maybe what your out was on those properties, and kind of what, okay, you identified as success and decided was going to be that path moving forward.
Yeah, there's one property in particular, the Eagle project that we had.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting one because there was a rooming house in the basement. So we had 4 bedrooms in the basement. It wasn't legal. It was a raised ranch, which is a great property type that we like because the basements for raised ranch units don't feel like basements, like bungalows. So personally, I stay away from bungalows for the conversions because when people walk into the room, you want that wow factor, and it's just much brighter and nicer with these raised ranch type properties. But it came with some, definitely some problems that we were inheriting from another investor. So at that time, which is a couple of years ago, we paid $292 for it. And I remember another agent, not the agent that I was working with, that had told me like, "Wow, like I can't believe you paid for that. You overpaid." And I'm like, I completely disagree. All my numbers say I got a great deal on that property. And so we bought that 292. We renovated it. We cleaned out the basement units. Our appraisal later came in at 460. And when all the numbers work out, we were able to pull out all of our renovation money and a good chunk of our initial down payment. And so that was an absolute success story. We brought the rents up. What's beautiful about this is they're brand new units. So you are number one, you are the top competition in your area. So we want to attract a certain tenant profile with that. So we've got all brand new finishes, which is great. We can get top market rents for the area. And when we're able to do that, it makes things much easier on the appraisal side when an appraiser's got to come through and you've got good, strong leases in place, and obviously all the work that you've done with that. So yeah, that was a few years ago. You're not unlikely to find a property like that at this point, at that price point, but that's fine, right? As London continues to see the growth that it's had over the last couple of years, it just means we continue to refine and change our numbers and adjust based off of what's changing in the market. And so we're really dialed in with those, and we continue to change those honestly, it's like almost on a weekly basis. Those numbers are changing as we see what's happening in the market.
And you have to adapt to the marketplace. I'm going to give you a little blast from the past here. Check this out. So here is the property. There was only one listing on it, or one photo on the property, but this would be the Eagle Street Crescent property. So, again, you went over asking price in a market where you saw the on-ramp, saw the opportunity, and did incredibly well with this property. Now, I do know the one piece of the conversation I think a lot of people want to know is with the appraisals. So this was kind of an unknown, right? Is how do you walk appraisers through that process? Like, how do you give appraisers the confidence to hit the numbers and values that you want to hit? Because we know what it's worth, but appraisers work in the past, right? They don't want to tie their name to a number that they don't know is achievable, even if the real estate agent says, "I know I can sell it for 10 grand more than that," right?
Yeah. So, you'll see some of our content. What I talk about is when we were starting to do these appraisals, we were using the HOPE strategy. And that is a strategy for absolute failure. And so our initial appraisals on our first couple of properties weren't coming in nearly as strong as we expected them to. And the problem that we had, especially with London, is an appraiser needs to use comps. And when they look at the areas that we were doing these conversions in, because London was still, pretty late to the game, to be honest, when it comes to the secondary suite conversions, they were using single family homes in the area as comps. These are not single family homes. These are investment properties, income properties. And so they should be treated more like duplexes. And so because of the challenges we were having with our appraisals, necessity is the mother of invention. We just looked and said, we got to change this up. We've got to do something differently. We need to take more control of the appraisal process. So we actually reached out to the appraiser before they were coming into this property and put together an entire deck that was filled with all the information down to like, what are our expenses, every single expense, right? You're not going to be able to hide anything on an appraiser. What were all the renovations, copies of the permits, communication even from the City of London acknowledging that this is a legal suite, that it should be, it's treated more like a duplex as far as London's concerned. And so in getting that sort of alignment with the appraiser, we were then able to use duplexes as comps instead of single family homes. And that's where everything changed there, because now we were on a more of a level playing field, and that enabled us to get the appraisal price up much more. And I still follow up with appraisers regularly. Like I had a call to an appraiser earlier this week because we've got one coming up on a property in a couple months. And I say, hey, how are things changing with COVID? Like, is there anything I need to do to adapt? So, we've got the deck that we typically put together for you. My plan is taking photos of every single room as well as videos of every single room so that I can support that documentation with that in the event that you can't go in the property. You still have an idea of everything that's going on there. So fortunately with this one, he said for this type of property, he'll probably still go through anyway, but that's not the case for every appraiser. So we want to make sure we've got all of our ducks in a row, that we're completely prepared for that. So if we end up with an appraisal or an appraiser that's doing a drive-by, we can give them all the information that we need.
Fun fact for you guys. So 2 fun facts. One is if you go to the chat, I actually shared his appraisal deck link. This is a kudos to Darcie. You've always been a good guy in terms of sharing. This is like our network. We work with the best people on the planet. Kim and John were on talking about JVs in like February and sharing all the secrets that somebody could take and go out and compete against them. But I think it's a community building mentality, and that's what you're all about, Darcie. So if anybody's on the chat and wants his appraisal deck, go and get it. I would say that's probably the most valuable thing you're even going to get from this chat alone, because so many people try to do appraisals and just use that hope strategy, and it just doesn't work. And it's difficult for the agent sometimes to go in. Like, we never want to come off as calling the appraisal and be like, hey, give us this number, because if the appraisers get that sense of us, that becomes our reputation. So we do it in a way where we try and call them and really hash out the comps and really prepare them. But us and the mortgage agents are very tied from the standpoint that we can't really influence them over and beyond. The onus does fall on the seller of the property, but using something like that, or just asking somebody like myself for supporting information, it was definitely helpful. Darcie touched on a great point too, that, sorry, let me just kick back over here. You touched on a really good point that London and smaller communities are very difficult to find appraisals on. Lindsay and I just went through this on a property that a client basically did a huge renovation to, and there's no comps in the city. Appraisers need sales in the last 90 days. If it's longer than 90 days, excuse me, they don't care. Like, that's just how they operate, right? And like, I talked to a guy that owns one of the largest appraisal companies in my area, and he's like, yeah, it's ridiculous. He's like, it's crazy they won't go back 12 months to a property that's sold next door that's identical and use that as a comp. It's 90 days. So what you have to do a lot of times is, if you're doing research, and if you're a real estate agent, use this advice as well, you have to go to similar areas and properties. So the property that we had was probably about 15 minutes from the lake, about maybe, let's call it 45 minutes from London. So we had to find another smaller town with a comp that has similar population size, similar price ranges of properties, and establish the comps based off that. So, I find that's a fairly good approach in terms of dealing with the appraisals. As far as your property management or finding tenants, like, do you prefer selling your units or keeping them? I guess, so you've built a secondary suite. Let's figure out how you put a body in there first, and then we'll get to the sales side of it.
Yeah, so again, we're looking to streamline every area of the business so that we can continue to scale. And so we've got a property management company that we use. They do a great job for us, and so they handle most of the tenant screening process. But I will admit I'm an absolute creep when it comes to tenant screening. So I do the LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, like anything that I can find. Whether you maybe participated in a charity, it's amazing the things that you can uncover. I know years ago, I remember a tenant that was looking for one of our basement suites, and everything on the application looked good, and even the property management company said, "Hey, look, everything here looks all right." And then I find an article in a London newspaper that they had been doing graffiti on, commercial properties, and just obviously some red flags. If that's how they're treating other people's property, how are they going to be treating my own? And then some other things, that I managed to dig up on some Facebook photos that I just was not a fan of myself. So, going through that, I've got trust in the property management company to do their due diligence, especially with things like the credit scores and rental history and all of that. But then beyond that, I'm still going through every single sort of social media channel just to see any other information that I can gather about, what type of tenant are we bringing in. And fortunately, with everything that's happened, during COVID, we've had 100% rent collection throughout this entire time, which has been fantastic. And I think that's just a testament to the screening process our property management company has in place, but also just some of the due diligence we want to do ourselves.
I think it goes back to what we were talking about, you really take ownership of your investments in your properties, right? Like, you have a great team around you, and you're trying to streamline and hire people for things that you either don't want to do or is not your specialty, to focus on pulling credit apps and stuff like that, but when it comes to doing appraisals and looking at your tenants, you're treating it like with value. And those are really like important things, right? The appraisal, prep, finding the right tenant. Those are two of the most crucial aspects of real estate investing and consumer you if they're not done properly. And, you know, we do a lot of review of people that apply at Prime and the two capacities that we do. We don't hire a lot of people because of what you said. You know, it blows my mind when you put an ad on Indeed and you get 79 applications from Hot Rod 54, and then you start looking them up online and you see the photos that they have on their Facebook. Like, you must laugh and show stuff to the wife sometime. Be like, look at this. Like, can you believe that, like, they're applying from a professional standard standpoint and this is on there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely got to make you laugh. So you've now got a body in there. I know you've kept some properties. I know you've sold some. What kind of leads to those decisions?
So the first one we had sold because things had gone well in the market, and we'd looked at an opportunity to cash out and then take that cash and put it back into a few more properties. And so it was we ended up selling to a Keyspire member, which ended up being a great offer and great deal for them. They absolutely love that property to date. But we were able to take that capital then and sort of multiply. And so that's what we were trying to do there. We were able to maximize everything out of that property. But I do want to jump back to one piece that I think is important, which is on the buy. And so there's a few things that we do there. First off, have an agent that can help view these properties for you ahead of time, right? So right now, you know, Mark will go through, if there's a property of interest for us, he'll go through, not only will he, you know, FaceTime me or take videos, but there's commentary within those videos. You know, there's one he sent me recently, and it was just like, I was just so impressed because, you know, you need to have the right people on your team that know exactly what you're looking for. So the ability to point things out, making sure we're looking for ceiling height, checking all of the windows, just any possible thing that we would want to consider when we start to run the numbers on these properties. And it just makes things so much easier for ourselves, because then it starts, you know, allowing us to start separating what's going to work for us, what doesn't. And then that takes us into, you know, our offer strategy. And so we even change things up with our offers, right? Like, we want to know before we actually submit an offer, we want to know how many offers there are. So collecting the information before you send that offer in. If there's one offer in, I've got a different price set, and all of our pricing is set before, you know, final time to submit. And so based on the number of offers, we'll have a, you know, sort of a scale that works all the way up to our max. And, you know, if we have to go to our max because there's too many multiples, then we'll go ahead and do that. And then that takes us into, you know, obviously the renovation and then the renting and the appraisal piece. But I wanted to touch on that initial portion, because the rest doesn't happen unless you've got the right people in place so that you can get the, you know, viewing as many of these properties as possible so you can start to put offers out.
I agree 1,000%. And I mean, there's a reason why Mark goes through the properties. He's 6'5", so he's that legal clear height. And if he hits his head on anything, then we know that it's not legal. No, honestly, Mark's one of the original guys. I mean, he came up with me when I started Prime, and I started working with Keyspire. He came to summits, and he knows the process and the system. And it's exactly what you said, right? Like, you know, I could be greedy and just keep every file to myself and, you know, run around like a madman. But then what's going to happen is I'm going to start dropping balls. I'm not going to answer phone calls and emails. You know, we like to be incredibly responsive. If you reach out to us, usually within 6 hours, we're getting back to you. If not within 10 minutes by text. Emails, we always try to get back to within a day. But we have people like Lindsay and Kyle Henry. You guys see him on the call as well, too. He's working with our team in a pretty amazing capacity as well. And we're just deploying people so that we know, okay, I know what Darcie's looking for. He's going to find that. I know what, you know what, we need a designer. We need somebody to come in and really get an investor-focused design on a property and save some money. You know what, Darcie, your flooring guy dropped the ball. You need somebody you call Lindsay. Like, we have people acting in so many different capacities. You want pre-construction condos, Victor's dialed in on that. Like, you just surround you, and I'm doing it too, right? In a different way, but I'm doing it within my own company because I'm seeing like, man, there's so many opportunities, but I can't be a specialist at every single thing or pretend I am, right? I can hire people around us and we can have a family of people and leverage each other's talents, but you're part of that family as well. And it's been interesting to see how you've kind of come in and out and given us ideas at new approaches. And like, when we do negotiations on a property and, you know, Mark's vetted the deal and we're going over offer strategy and I'm calling you and saying, you know what, like, let's just give them this offer to start with. It looks terrible, but then we can go back in with this offer knowing how many offers there are. That's the fun part of real estate.
Yeah.
But it's all strategy, little tips, right? Like, Some people will just give their best and final offer before they've even been told they're in multiples. Crazy. But real estate agents do it all the time. They get told, oh, we got 3 offers coming, and here's an offer 30 over asking price, and then the other offers don't show up. Well, you still wrote an offer for 30 over asking price, right? So, take your time at the beginning, get the right people around you, and don't be afraid to ask, because I think people will give you a lot more than you think they will, just off the cuff. And I think people are afraid to ask questions in the beginning, right? Do you agree, Darcie? Like, you find people just, they're scared to sound stupid, or they don't want to not know what to say, or feel like they should understand the language a little bit more?
Yeah, and that's understandable, right? It's intimidating at first. And so, especially in the beginning when you're just learning and educating, you're leaning on other people, but at the same time, this is this is your business. This is your livelihood that you're building out. And so you need to do your best job and focusing on continuous improvement. Every offer is an opportunity to learn, review what happened with the strategy. Should we have offered a little bit less, or could we have offered a little bit more? How could we have changed our process there? Like, that's one thing that we continue to do, is just keep looking back. It's, what did we do? How can we change that? How can we be better with that, right? How can we be better with our offers so that we're more successful on the right properties? How can we improve our appraisals? How can we manage the contractors better? There's just so many areas of the business that, as you find yourself wasting, valuable time on it, you kind of look it back and like, if you invest a little bit of time to change this up a little bit, it'll make it so much easier for the rest of your real estate investing career. So, taking some time to focus on that continuous improvement, it's always a sort of a motto for myself and for our business, because it just allows you to keep taking those next steps forward.
That's awesome. And I agree 1,000%. I'm going to share something with you guys that we just recently implemented, because I do think it's about putting your ego aside. The one thing I'll touch on is, no matter what you buy, you're going to think you overpaid. And no matter what you sell, you're going to think you sold it for less than you should have. That is a fact of life. Every property I've bought and sold, it's called buyer and seller's remorse. It's a real thing. So you're going to be okay there. I'm going to share my screen for a quick second and show you guys something. So this is called the after action report. So we just implemented this last week. I do it anyways on every single sale I do, every single deal that I do. And it's literally a little box: name, property address, what was it? So what did we sell? Was it a buyer sale? Was it, helping somebody through a refi? How did you bring client to the value? What went well? What can I improve on? And then this doesn't go public facing at all, but all of our agents will go through these things and, really get a sense of how things are trending. And I automated that. So you can actually go to Google Forms and you can do something very similar. This replay will be online. So if you want that report, just text me and I'll just fire those questions off. But you can actually automate it. So you can ask yourself every time you do something, what did I do well? What can I improve on? And then you can actually systemize it so it goes into a spreadsheet and you can notice a trend. So, we did, I think, 150 plus deals last year. If we have all that data, organized, it's easy to look at, where can I improve? Where can I improve? Where can I improve? Where can I improve? And then really see a trend, right? And then say, okay, well, what can I do to fix what I need to improve on, right? And I'll put ourselves on that platform and say, we send out all the weekly drops and we try to send all the analysis to you guys all the time, but there's no real interpretation of the data beyond, here's the data, right? So last week we kind of spent a little bit more time. We shot it in more in-depth video. We broke down the inventory. We're like, here's some flip opportunities. Speaking to you now, I'm like, well, now maybe I can identify some secondary suite opportunities, throw that in there. At the bottom of the email was, run for the hills, don't buy these properties, right? Which I was talking to Steve Coxis yesterday about, and he's like, yeah, that was incredibly valuable, because I don't know these streets. I don't know a lot of these property addresses. So just a little way that we could improve. But I think collectively, if I get feedback from you guys, we can get better and better at that. I want to ask you one more question about the secondary suite portion of it. And then I want to jump into social media and why you think it's so important, because I do know that's a big drive of yours. And I think it's phenomenal what you're doing. But, are you going to change your business model kind of post-COVID? Are you taking any precautions in terms of how you're approaching deals? Like, what does that look like for you?
So what's interesting is, when we put our numbers together, we run 3 scenarios. And so, every deal that we look at, we run conservative, expected, and best case. And conservative is basically if COVID happens, right? So we were doing this before COVID even happened. And so, when we look at conservative, for every project that we've had, we've been able to pull out all of our renovation money and a portion of the down payment. But in our conservative scenario, that doesn't happen. Our appraisal comes in lower than expected. Our cash flow is lower than expected, and we're leaving more money in the deal. This is why for us, a deal needs to work in conservative before we can even consider it, right? So if it doesn't even work there, then there's no deal to be had, because we don't have a crystal ball. You know, if someone tells me, you know, if someone ever told me like, oh, you're going to do well in this, it's going to be 10 to 15% within the next year, I'm like, okay, well, you know, anything could happen. To me, that's speculating just a little bit. And so we'll use 3%. And if we go higher than that, amazing, right? Like we know London has unbelievable potential that way, where it's been doing double digits plus, you know, over the last couple of years. But for us, when we have that conservative scenario run, it allows for us to, you know, brace for impact if something like COVID happens and still come out with what we believe is still a good, successful deal. In addition to that, COVID is happening right now. 5 years from now, which I'm buy and hold, I'm long term, I'm in it for the long game. 5 years from now, I truly don't believe I'm going to be looking back and going like, you know, I'm so glad I, you know, sat on the sidelines during COVID, right? I know that things are going to bounce back. I know the potential that London has. So right now, especially if there's opportunities for me to get, you know, we had a deal we just firmed up on yesterday, but if we had an opportunity to go conditional, which we did on that one, oh man, it's a breath of fresh air. Like I've got more time to evaluate. I've got more time to do due diligence. So you know, I understand all, you know, everything that's happening with COVID, but for everyone that's sitting on the sidelines, I'm jumping right in there and taking advantage of everything that I can. And so my intention, at least over the next couple of months, is to acquire a number of properties while there's this quote unquote downtime, because when it's gone, everyone's going to be looking back, in my opinion at least, and going like, oh geez, yeah, I guess, you know, I totally missed that boat. There was a 3, 4, 5 month window where I might have been able to do something because there was a little bit of uncertainty. And so at the end of the day, I'm looking long term. So it's less of, you know, it's less of a worry for me, because 5 years from now, I fully believe there's going to be tons of value there and upside based off of our conservative projections.
Great mindset to have too. I think, and anybody would say that Warren Buffett says, you know, you buy when everybody's not buying and you stop buying when everybody's buying, right? Like you always navigate those waters, and we play in those waters every day. So there's quite often we're working with members and telling them, nope, don't buy, don't buy, don't buy. And then we call them over and say, buy now, because there's so much inventory and like you catch these lulls in the market. So even when the market is frothy, there's opportunities, but you have to be prepared and understand why you're doing what you're doing. And I think really, Darcie, you've had to take a systematic approach to this is what we do. This is why we do it. This is our exit strategy. And this is kind of our buy and hold strategy. And if you go back in 25 to 50 year increments, it's incredible to see what happens in the market and the real estate. You know, it constantly does go up. And, you know, the people that lived in areas that the house is sold for $50,000 probably thought they're never going to become worth $100,000. And now they're worth $300,000. And then they say, well, they're never going to be worth $500,000, right? And we'll all be old and gray thinking, I would have bought every single real estate deal I could looking back 50 years down the road. So, you know, I do want to push everybody to your channels. I shared it earlier on in the chat. It'll be in the replay that I share as well. You know, I want to drive everybody to your YouTube and your Instagram. You know, share with the community your mindset around what you're doing, maybe why you're doing it, and, you know, maybe how they can reach you.
So in my, you know, my day job career over the last, you know, couple of years, I've been really involved with operations and with marketing. And I've always found with content, it's just providing free value out there. If you continue to do that, you'll start attracting the right type of people. And so, you know, the appraisal packages, we've actually streamlined that because we were getting so many email requests for it that, again, it was another thing that I looked at and said, okay, well, we need to put a landing page on the website so people can just download and take that for themselves. But the community, you know, especially the real estate community, is so giving. I found for everyone, right? Like they're putting out value, they're putting out content. You see so much that's happening out there, learning so much from everyone. And I think we want an opportunity first to give back and start, you know, pulling behind the curtain and looking at things that we were doing. But also we want to start, you know, really positioning ourselves as experts at what we do as we look to scale and grow. And so I think the best way to do that is put a face in front of the camera, talk about all the things that we're doing. What's funny is like people, I remember, the other half of Nasilva Wealth, Lucas, at one point when we were starting to put some stuff out, he's like, well, like, we're going to be sharing all of our secrets. Like, aren't we just creating more competition for ourselves? And I'm like, it's amazing how many people you can talk to and say, hey, like, step by step, this is everything you need to do to have, an amazing deal on a property. And the ability to take action just isn't there. I could tell this to 100 people, and a small percentage of those people are actually going to take action on it. And so I'm not worried about creating all this big competition and everything. There's the people that are just the go-getters that are going to go out and do it, and that's going to happen regardless if they see my video or not. And then there's the other camp that's just not that type of breed. And so the content's been phenomenal. It's been great to put out, great feedback on it, and we love participating and doing our part in the community, just like everyone else is doing.
Makes you better, and it holds you accountable as well, right? Because
Yes.
when you're going there, you're forcing yourself to find new content, come up with new ideas, sharpen your sword. You're getting better at your craft, right? Like it really puts you, out of your comfort zone. I mean, you're preaching to the choir. I started giving away all of my real estate secrets, and I actually had a big developer in my office 2 days ago, and he's like, "That's why I'm working with you." He's like, "There's certain things in his world he can't share because there's things that people just can't figure out of how he does what he does," which is like, yeah, it's fine to have industry secrets. But at the same time, I'm like, when you give out a secret about what you do, you're putting out good faith and goodwill into the world. And that servant leadership mindset of putting others before yourself will always, always net out to bring you more in abundance in your life than just trying to take something from every relationships. Because if you leave a whole bunch of burnt bridges, you got nothing to walk over. You don't have people following you, right? And you're getting to that level too, where you're giving back and helping other people do things that you're not necessarily always going to be doing. So like, once you've done a number of deals and you start scaling, like your business model is changing, like your approach and how you're going to like invest time and effort into each property. And maybe the amount of money you're pulling from each property is going to change versus your net on the entire thing. But you're also reaching a hand up to people that are probably levels above you, and they're reaching down because you're in that same mindset. So you're going to attract people in both capacities. And I think giving back to people that are asking you questions and being thoughtful and respectful of other people that aren't necessarily where you are right now is going to lead to a lot of success. So I give you quite a bit of kudos. We're going to do a lightning round of questions. I'll fire through them right now and you can kind of answer them.
Sure.
The first one's from Maria. It says, what do you guys think of the fact a lot of companies will move their workers to work remotely? I'm thinking, why stay in the expensive Toronto? Why a lot of people move away to have bigger houses? Much smaller towns in Ontario, which would push prices up in places like London. It was already happening. I mean, I can tell you the GTA effect's been happening since 2017. The 401 people like drive till you qualify, or like, I'll drive an extra 30 minutes to work for a better quality of life, and looking for different opportunities. But it depends on what you want. You want to live in the big city and that's what you want, then you do that, right? There's a reason Toronto's growing at the rate that it's growing. But I do agree that you think people are going to change pretty dramatically in terms of how they operate. They can do stuff like this, live their life, run to the beach, go for a bike in the forest. And it's going to change pretty dramatically. You're in Toronto, Darcie. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think, the working from home, especially with everything that's happened over the last little bit, is going to become more of the new norm. But Toronto's always going to be Toronto. It's just a mega hub here. There's just so much employment and so much happening. And so there are people that are just big city people. I'm here because the boss says we're staying in Toronto, because I've made multiple bids to take family back to London, and I've been unsuccessful in doing that. But aside from that, yeah, you definitely see that effect happening. And I think what also you've seen is an effect on rents with London. Like you have GTA pushing down to Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, Hamilton, and then you have that group getting pushed down to Brantford or even London. And what they paid for rent in KWC is not all that different actually with what the rent you're paying for is in London. There's not a huge variance, to be honest. And then the entry point for London is much lower. And so with all of that happening, it's been interesting to see. One of the reasons why I love London so much is you've got great, strong rents. You've got this effect where everything's getting pushed out. And if people start doing more of this work from home and all of that, families are going to look at London as like, hey, I still want to be in a city, but I also want, a nice big lot. I want nice family areas, parks, all of that stuff. And so they'll have that balance there. And also, I don't want to pay, $1 million and get just a shack with a driveway that, can't really do much with, like you see in Toronto.
For sure. It's opportunity based. We got a question from Robin Michelle. When was your first purchase? When did you actually make your first investment?
Yeah, I think I touched on that earlier. That would have been August of 2015.
Awesome. Mike Seals got to run. Thanks to everybody in the team. Mike Seals, our Windsor guy. He's a character. I love Mike. Thanks for joining us, Mike. Steve. Oh, that's for the tenant qualification. Min had a really good question. She said, we normally go through banks for mortgages. We don't even know who the appraiser is beforehand. We never get the appraisal reports, even though they pay for it. How do they get around that?
So personally, I work with a broker, and when we have the appraisal scheduled, you'll get information on the appraisal company, and I'll reach out and ask for just a call.
Yeah,
it's pretty simple. So I'll just send an email and say, hey, I've got a package that I put together that I'd like to review prior to the visit, and we'll go through and do all that. And now that we're touching on the visit, one thing with the visit that we do is we actually give gift cards to our tenants, to like the Keg or wherever else, whatever restaurant, so that they can vacate the property during the appraisal, and we'll hire cleaners to come through and clean the entire place so it's top notch, right? It's clean. There's no awkwardness walking through with people in the bedrooms and all of that. So you have every opportunity to give the appraiser to look at all the different changes that were made. I did see something pop up with the bungalow. I'm not going to say that bungalows are not a good fit. It's, again, I've got a very specific property type that I'm looking for and a preference. So, you can still do this with the bungalows, but the challenge that I have with the bungalows is I really do appreciate that wow factor when someone walks into the property. And so when they walk into our properties, first thing they're generally going to see is a kitchen. That's going to have pendulum lighting. That's our one feature light that we have hanging over the kitchen island. And that first impression sets the stage for your rents, right? Same thing goes for the basement unit. We've got the pendulum lighting that'll be happening over the island. And so when they walk in, with the raised ranches, the back splits, you get these big bright windows, lots of sunshine coming in. So again, that first impression when they come in is like, okay, I could see myself here. This is a basement unit, but it doesn't feel like the other basement units I may have looked at.
I agree, right? And I actually love raised ranches. I love that you go after those ones too, because they're actually one of my favorite property types to show. But it depends on the person type, right? Like if you're doing it as secondary dwelling units, they're great because each one has the one level. You can run into challenges on the older demographic because of the amount of stairs that are in them, but they're great properties depending on who you're actually targeting. The Steve Little had a question around the insurance and replacement cost. How does an insurer come up with replacement cost value on a property? We get this a lot in the real estate world. People will say that, oh, I just got an appraisal on my place, or my insurance company just valued my place at $1 million, and I'm telling them they have to list for $899. They're confused. Quite often it's based on, there's two formulas that I'm aware of that they do, and it could be wrong. The first one is the depreciated costs of everything in your home combined with your replacement value. So like the actual cost to rebuild the property, and building costs will go up, right? Building costs went up 15% last year. So the dollar per square foot value for a builder to rebuild a property on that piece of land is what the replacement cost is going to be. Sometimes they'll factor in the acquisition of the land. Have you had to deal with that at all, Darcie, and what you guys been doing?
No, that's not something that's come up with any of the projects that we've had. So
Okay.
as much as I'd love to provide some insight there, it's nothing that I would be able to responsibly answer.
No problem. The Natalie was asking, is it possible to find those deals? Natalie, I believe you're talking about the secondary dwelling units. I guess it is possible, right, Darcie? Because it seems like you're doing it.
Yeah, well, we just went from yesterday. So again, it's all about making sure that you've got the numbers in place. That to me is definitely going to be a great deal. And we were conditional, so it was out there. It was out there for everyone to see. Anyone could have put an offer on that property. So the deals are absolutely there. But again, if you've got the right fundamentals in place with how you're running your numbers, it makes it much easier to find these quote unquote deals. One thing to keep in mind is it's really hard to mess up a secondary suite conversion from an ROI perspective. Like a really bad deal, if if it's your first time doing it and every possible thing goes wrong, you go way over budget, your appraisal doesn't come in as high, like I would consider a bad year one return on your investment, like 20%. So put that against like the stock market, you're doing much better than that. So
Yeah.
like that's also something to keep in mind is like, even if you don't get out of the park results on your first conversion, it's actually pretty tough to do a really, really bad job with it. So, hey, you educated yourself, you learned a lot. Fortunately for us on our first one, we looked like geniuses because we had the benefit of appreciation that happened over the time of that project. We managed on the refi on that one to get all of our money out, including the down payment and a little bit of extra. So we had a perfect burr on that one. But even when a deal like that could potentially go bad, 20% would look like a bad number. So if this is something that you're seriously considering, just look at it at the end of the day like, hey, okay, if 20% ended up being my number at the end of my first project, I can live with that. I've learned a lot. And the next one, I'm going to do 60, 70, 80, hundreds. The potential there is incredible with what you can do if you've got all the right pieces in place.
I agree 1,000%. The guy, so from Mike, hey guys, with CMHC predicting an 18% market drop, should you wait a little longer to see how things play out before jumping in? It's a conversation that's been happening since like 2015. All the economists and everybody that are out there saying, oh, there's going to be a soft landing, it's unsustainable. And I mean, you go back another 50 years. You're always going to see these cycles, right? And market corrections and market drops do happen, which is why you have a conservative plan going in and you don't just buy every deal and think, you can't go wrong. Buying every single deal based on the Airbnb numbers, probably not the best strategy right now. My opinion as well is CMHC's job is they're in risk management and they're looking at macro statistics. Macro statistics don't work in micro markets. So be aware of it and understand kind of what's happening and plan for a 10-year property or a 15-year property. Don't sell your properties. Like all of the good people that work within this network will tell you to keep all the deals you can. Darcie and I had multiple conversations about should he sell the first property. And it was like, it was setting a record price for it. And it was a great deal for the Keys buyer, remember, which was amazing because it's legacy, right? Like doing good business with good people, everybody does well at the end of the day and everybody gets to make money. But I think it's imperative to understand, who the people are that are giving you advice, even me, right? Like some people will look at me and say, well, you want a real estate brokerage, obviously you're going to say the market's great. No, not necessarily. Like when things turn, I'm pretty quick to say, stop. Like we succeed in good markets and bad markets. When markets are bad, liquid investors buy a lot of stuff. People, will build houses because the market's bad. They can get in at a better cost. The market's amazing. Same thing. People sell their houses. They have more cash in their pockets. It kind of balances out. But I do think the overlooming, the market's going to drop, don't do anything may backfire. You may end up looking back in a year and the market's gone up 15%. That's a real thing. It can happen. And it looks like it's going to happen this year and be priced out of what you wanted to do. And all of a sudden your down payment's not going to get you what you wanted. Darcie, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. So even if there's a downturn in the market, you don't see this sharp decline that happens with rents. Rents generally happen more gradually. And so the rental income that you're still going to be able to get for these properties is still going to be really, really strong. And right now with our conversions, our properties are cash flowing anywhere from $700 to $1,000. So even if the appraisal didn't come in as strong as we'd liked because, 6 months, 12 months from now, things continue to dip in the market, I'm still going to be buying. If it's dipping, I'm still going to be purchasing because again, I'm buy and hold. I'm not looking to turn this over in the next 6 to 12 months. I know the rents are still going to be there to carry that property. And if it requires maybe a second refinance that happens down the road, then we can always look at that option as well. So if we're not as strong on the initial appraisal and we can't get everything out on the first refi and our return is 20%, okay, I'll live with that. And then when things start to come up, we can go for that second refi as well. I'm just not going to sell in that down market, right? So if things are down, that's just not the time that I'm personally, at least with these properties, going to be selling. So if I'm looking at a 5-year horizon to exit on this, CMHC is saying 18 months. Okay, sure. Everyone has said a lot of things about all of this. At the end of the day, it's the people that have bought and stayed in real estate over time, in my networks at least, that have always done well, right? And so that's what we're going to continue to do. And again, the numbers, it's really hard to mess these up. And if you've got your conservative projections in place, we look at 3% appreciation year over year, 5 years out. I'm very confident London's going to crush that, but if the numbers don't work at 3%, they don't. So I love that upside that London has, that potential that it has, because I've seen what it could do in the past. I've been part of those 30 plus multiple offers, 100,000 over asking on a property listed at 300. Like, I've seen the gangbuster stuff that has happened when the market has just been absolutely on fire. So I will welcome a little bit of this downtime right now. And if there is a little bit of a dip that happens, sure. I think the government's done a good job with the deferral program. It's kept the real estate market stable. People haven't had to exit out of their properties. And so I think there's been some support there as well that has helped keep things pretty stable at this point.
Comment from Bianca. She seems to have a private sale available. Make a deal on a St. Thomas 4-level back split. Feel free to email that to us. I know Lindsay's going to reach out to you as well and take a look at that. Would love to see what that looks like and run it through our system. Simon Glantz, old adage, you can't time the market. Very, very true, Simon. You can't time the market. It doesn't matter how good you are at real estate. Anybody that tells you they can time the market, be very, very careful about what they're telling you. One more thing for you guys. Oh, wait. What's the outlook for surrounding towns around London and St. Thomas? Same as London. I mean, our market is what it is, right? Like, people move from the GTA to London. London local people are like, oh my gosh, can't believe I could sell this house for $500,000. They think that's a lot. And then they run to like Grand Bend, Ilderton, Port Stanley, St. Thomas. To give you an idea, the project we just launched, this is like not public yet. I don't even think it's on MLS. I think it's going up today. But we have a project. There's 38 semi-detached bungalows, beautiful product by Domus. And we're selling them in the 350s. And we're doing 3-phase pricing. So we're increasing the pricing 5% per phase. The first phase pricing, we've already had a number of sales. I think they're probably going to do the first increase fairly quickly. And then single detached homes backing onto Ravine, you know, I can't release those prices. And then condos, but they're probably like 15% cheaper than they would be in London. So in my opinion, London, St. Thomas, phenomenal. Lindsay owns property in St. Thomas. She's done a number of deals with people there. The last thing I'm going to tell you guys, because we got 3 minutes left, I think we did pretty good in terms of our timing, is our friends at the REC team. They're doing brunch with REC at 10:30. So we were going to end this a little bit early, let you guys jump over there and hang out with Simit and Jazz. They're always an entertaining bunch for sure. I know Jazz is putting out a lot of content. The link, I'll actually drop it in the chat. Lindsay, do you have anything else for the group?
No, I just did put a question in there, just asking if you have like average cost of what a secondary suite conversion would cost, just to get an idea in your head, or do these costs significantly change with each property?
Yeah, we have a range that we run. I would say if you're doing your first one, I would probably budget about 100,000 because you haven't had the opportunity to identify the deals, efficiencies, all of that. And so I think that would be a good, nice round number to work with. At this point right now, you know, even just looking at some of our more recent projects, we're looking at anywhere from 70 to 90,000, but that's including things like your carrying costs while you're doing the renovations. That's including things like appliances, because every property has a dishwasher added, it has ensuite laundry, and all brand new stainless steel appliances. So you've got to get that for the entire property. I will say, you know, shout out to IKEA, but like for kitchen prices, IKEA is fantastic for getting great prices on the kitchen cabinets. So that's something I would seriously consider. It was a big area of savings for us. You know, our project we have going on right now, our basement kitchen, is $1,600 just for the cabinets. That includes the island. And all we've got to do is add some countertops on that. So it's pretty tough to beat some of those prices. But yeah, first time going, I would say probably want to budget about 100,000. But right now we're probably looking at anywhere from the 70 to 90 range based on the projects that we're doing today.
Awesome.
Amazing. Well,
Perfect.
we want to thank every single one of you for being here. We got a ton of value from the conversation. Darcie, you're an absolute monster. I appreciate you being part of our community, and I consider you a friend just like everybody else that we meet and get to do business with. So do you have any parting comments or any message you want to give everybody watching?
Analysis paralysis. Take action. Get in there. Learn as you go. I'm not a renovator. I don't have any construction background. I just break things. And if I can do my first conversion, not having any of that type of experience, there's no reason why anyone else on this call couldn't do it as well.
100%. That's a great message. If somebody else has done it, you can do it too. We will see you guys next month. Lindsay will send out all the information, and looking forward to seeing you all again. Take care for now.
Awesome. See you guys.
Okay. Bye-bye.